In this episode of Archispeak Theater.
Archispeak Theater.
Welcome. Oh, that was a nice wake up right there. What you been doing, Cormac? Are you okay? So in traditional Cormac Phelan fashion, you would be listening to Suicidal Tendencies,
or Tchaikovsky.
What? Yeah, we've had an episode of musical appreciation before, and you have a wide range, as do I.
Yeah, it was interesting. So I think we've talked about this, or if we haven't talked about this, we got a new dog, and the new dog's warming up to me a little slower than our old pup, and he's over there somewhere sitting up against a wall. And so I felt like, let's just play some nice peaceful music for the doggy. I'm not sure he would appreciate some of my playlists right now. And since I'm trying to keep him calm, and he seems to be perfectly fine. So, I mean, it's Christmas.
Some piercing violins. Yeah. That's what dogs want to hear.
Funny enough, he's actually liking it.
Nice. So what have you been doing? What you been up to this morning?
Helping my daughter. I know what you're asking about, and I'm going to avoid that for a second.
You're avoiding it.
And talking about the good things. My daughter start to create a 80s playlist.
Oh, nice. Nice.
She has got a fantastic...
So she's looking for recommendations or
she's got great playlists that she's already created for the 60s, 70s.
Okay.
And she was just like, I've been listening to the 70s playlist for so long that I need
time to move into the new decade here.
She's like, I need to kind of break it up some. And she's like, I know what mom would be telling me to play as part of my 80s playlist, stuff that she would roller skate to and stuff like that. And she's like, I'm not sure if I should ask you, because now I'm getting into the 80s playlist of, well, you could go with the Salad Days playlist that I was just talking about in the previous episode. Or
I'm looking up my 80s playlist because I've got one right here too.
And funny enough, so we started talking about all sorts of different ones. And she's actually, it's interesting, the bands that she had already put in there. And I don't know about you, but I'm always impressed at what my kids create as part of their playlists.
I'm not privy to that information. I can tell you that.
Well, the only reason I'm privy to it is because it's all on the family plan of the iTunes.
So they make playlists and then share them with you, or what? Because
no, they're too lazy to create their own separate account, even though I've given them the link to create their separate account.
So you don't actually have a family plan here. It's like all
no.
your
I
account.
have a family plan that they just don't use.
They ignore. So all of these playlists are actually under your account.
Under my account.
So your children are totally like poisoning the well when it comes to the Apple Genius stuff or whatever.
Netflix, you name it,
it's all poisoned.
All of those are poisoned. Because apparently Netflix thinks it might not be too terribly wrong that I like the Gilmore Girls.
So you don't even set up profiles in Netflix?
I do too. They have all of theirs. And here's the funny thing about that. Even that.
They're so lazy.
They're like, I think that they're like, I just want to keep mine pure. This is the exact words that came out of my daughter's mouth. I want to keep
I'd rather poison yours.
Exactly.
What does that even mean, keep mine pure? Like
when she starts to add things to her play, like whether it's Netflix or whatever else, it
doesn't make any sense.
Uncorrupted by like all of the other nonsense that they, like right now, apparently I'm big into Hallmark holiday movies.
Man, who isn't?
Well, that's true.
But there's just
exactly.
What the heck?
Exactly.
Insane.
So yes.
How do you allow such a thing? That's just okay. So let's name off some 80s. I still want to talk about what you've really been doing this morning. But
yes.
But name off some of the bands that she's got in hers, and let's judge these.
So, When in Rome,
and hers/yours.
Yeah. It was apparently now it's mine. Yeah. When in Rome, The Cure, Pet Shop Boys, The Cars, Tears for Fears, Crowded House, Eurasia, Dexy's Midnight
Did
Runners,
you say
which
Eurasia?
Eurasia,
Erasure?
Whatever. It's been a long
There's no
morning. It has been. There is one in the sure part of it.
Yes, there is one there.
Yeah.
Do you have any Tears for Fears? Or
Yep, I was just about to say Tears for Fears.
You got some Steve Miller Band in there.
So she's got a lot of her Steve Miller Band stuff is actually in her 70s playlist because it's the earliest stuff.
Yeah. What about Hall and Oates? You got any Air Supply or Hall and Oates in there?
So she has Hall and Oates again in her 70s playlist because of the earlier stuff. And I think she's a lot like me on this. If the bands continue with some form of longevity into the 80s, my personal opinion, some of them suck. Plain and simply.
And you've made that clear.
Well, what's funny is she's just
offspring.
Well, she was just like, what's with the 80s and synthesizers? I'm like, that's just 80s.
Well, they were invented. Yeah.
It was just like 80s and synthesizers. That's literally it. Look.
Incredible. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. It's not, you shouldn't think about it any other way.
But, she, Aha, Duran Duran, Pixies.
Got the Depeche Mode in there? You were texting me about Violator the other day.
She, as much as I've suggested to her to add Depeche Mode in there, she says that the only song that she likes is...
Let me guess. People Are People.
Nope. Oh, it is off of the album that I texted you the other day.
Oh, okay.
The Violator album.
Violator. What's the song?
Now I have to go to Violator because
now you got to find it.
I've forgotten. It's not Personal Jesus.
We'll play some Jeopardy music here for a second.
Okay. I think she said Sweetest Perfection.
Oh, okay. I responded. So when you sent me that, you mentioned how we've talked about how there's great albums, right?
Yes.
And I was just listening to kind of a breakdown of a vocal coach on YouTube who I like to watch, the charismatic voice. She's fun to watch.
Yeah. She
did one on Smashing Pumpkins, Mayonnaise, and amazing song, which is that album.
Yeah,
Siamese Dream. It escaped me for a second. Is just one of those albums for me.
I totally agree with you.
You said Violator is one of those albums, and so I put it on. Like I was vacuuming, and so I put it on, and man, Dave Gahan's voice is incredible. It's so good.
It is, and
as you said, it is the sweetest thing.
Sweet, no, that's you too.
Sorry, that's you too.
It's Sweetest Perfection.
Sweetest Perfection. Yes, so good. It's so good.
We were talking about that, and she's just like, I don't know. She's like, there's just songs I want to hear, and that's what she's trying to create.
Here's what ruins it for the youngsters is autotune is a thing. It's everywhere. And people don't realize that music in the 60s, 70s, 80s didn't have autotune.
Right.
It was like these 90s too. These vocal performances are just absolutely incredible because they're not messed with the computer.
Right.
Yep.
And so funny enough, she doesn't really listen to music of her generation.
Mm-hmm. Because of you.
I guess it's because of me. No.
It is. And it's because you've poisoned that, so she gets to poison your Netflix.
Well, that's true. I remember one time I was just like, wow, my daughter knows all the lyrics to Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then I was just like, oh, damn. My daughter knows all the lyrics to Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Sword. Yeah, totally.
Because none of them are appropriate for her.
Right.
It's
so man, the 80s were great. The 80s, there's a huge range in there. I mean, think about this. Isn't this like when 9 Inch Nails really hit the scene?
So 9 Inch Nails was late 80s.
I want to say though that like I want to say mid 80s. I saw recently something about Trent Reznor kind of lamenting the fact that some of his stuff was 40 years old. Like, that's insane.
Well,
that's insane.
Didn't you and I just talk about the fact that if in 2 years, whatchamacallit, the Beastie Boys,
yeah, right,
is going to
Licensed to Ill.
Yeah, Licensed to
40.
Ill is going to be 40 years old, and that is insanity, just insanity.
It is. It is insanity.
I'm looking at I'm trying to find what okay, so they formed in 1988.
9 Inch Nails did?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So maybe it was earlier.
So Pretty Hate Machine probably was, it says essential albums. I want all the albums. That one. 1989 was Pretty Hate Machine.
All right. I'm looking up.
So it kind of qualifies. Just like Violator is 1990, so it falls out of the range of that one. But then there's Music for the Masses and things like that you could.
I had Music for the Masses on cassette, and I remember putting it, going on a Boy Scout trip.
Oh, gosh.
On a Boy Scout camping trip to Mount Palomar Observatory. So San Diego area, putting that cassette in the car and playing it with, there was probably 6 of us in this Oldsmobile, because it had 2 bench seats, like front and back, right? Mm-hmm. So there were 6 of us sitting. It's an early SUV. It was an Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme.
Ooh.
And a giant trunk full of camping gear. And my dad was driving us down there, and amongst other cars and vans. So it was a big, big group camping trip. And so car camping, right? The adults were chaperoning and cooking and doing the main stuff, and we were setting up tents and all that stuff and playing Music for the Masses. And my dad did not like that at all. He thought it was whiny, depressing music. And he wasn't wrong. I think about it, but then I also think like how great it was. It was just, it's so good. I think about the Thompson Twins. I think about Howard Jones. The Pet Shop Boys.
Yeah,
like these need to be on your daughter's playlist. You better be taking notes here.
I've told her I was just like Till Tuesday, things like that, and she's like, "Oh no, I don't like her voice." The Voices Carry song,
Cyndi Lauper.
So she's kind of doing a slightly different take on like 80s music. So it's not like the Bangles or poppy kind of version. It's more kind of
top 40, not top 40.
I did show her the college rock, and she's like, "Ooh, all of these are great." And like, that's more of kind of, I guess, what she's really looking for is the college rock stuff. Because I told her, I was like, this is more, I was like, if I wasn't listening to the punk stuff, I was also listening to kind of the college rock stuff.
Totally.
That's where I discovered REM, which, she's the only one other than me who can listen to REM, but not like I do. Like, I've just been playing the essentials like all last week.
I enjoy those playlists on the streaming music services that they put those together. They'll put them together for decades or genres or all kinds of stuff. And I find those are pretty darn good. And if there's a song you don't like, just skip it. But they're pretty decent compilations for sure. They're pretty fun.
So when I was listening to Music for the Masses before Violator came out, my strongest memory of that is driving through the mountains of the Black Forest when I was stationed in Germany.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
It is very kind of, I think that those synths and those drum machines and stuff that they were using to create that album was very German.
It sort of felt like that. And it's not like the German clubs were playing all that music.
Synth pop.
I mean, oh my God, synth pop was like,
yeah.
I wasn't necessarily, I mean, it was funny is like bands that I liked were synth pop, but then there was those like, I don't know, do we consider New Order synth pop? I don't think so.
No.
I was going to say, I don't think so.
They were analog instruments, I think. They might have had a drum machine here and there, but...
Yeah. Did you ever hear of 808 State?
I've heard that term, but...
808 State is a band.
Oh, okay.
Kind of a house techno band.
Okay.
They actually did an album with Bjork,
Oh,
and
nice.
it was amazing.
Nice.
So
I'll have to check that out.
you need to.
I'm writing it down. 808 State.
Yeah. So what have I been doing this morning? Trying to keep myself sane.
Before
Go ahead.
before you do this, I just have one Dave Gahan story. I actually
Okay.
was within like 10 feet of Dave Gahan once.
Oh,
I didn't
cool.
I didn't do anything to like embarrass myself or him by asking for an autograph, although I should have. But it was at a U2 show in Southern
Oh, really?
California. I went to go see their
Which album?
was it called the Elevation Tour or the All That You Can't Leave Behind? I can't remember. It was like
What year?
yes, it's the one with Beautiful Day on it, right? Like
Oh,
that's
okay.
the kickoff song. And that was cool because their stage was like this heart, right? It was this, if you look at it
Okay,
in plan
okay.
view,
Oh, I
it
got
was
it.
this heart. And the point of the heart was the tip of it, what like the bottom tip, if you drew the heart shape, was out in the audience. But the first fans who bought general admission tickets ran down there, including myself, waited in line all day long to have this opportunity to get into the heart. And they only let like 150, 200 people inside the heart part of the
Nice.
stage. Everybody else was either up in the seats or out on the general floor. And I made it down there. The friend that I went with did not make it.
Oh,
He didn't make
man.
it in the heart. And he was pissed that I didn't come out and hang out with him on the outside. I'm like, what are you?
You're like,
I'm in
dude,
the heart, dude. Like,
You have no
what Are you
heart.
what are you talking about? I clearly had no heart. And so I got to be like within 10 feet of all of you too, because you could move around freely inside. You're on your feet the whole time, but you were
Right.
literally like,
Yeah.
you could reach up and touch the edge's foot if you wanted to or whatever, if you could, if security didn't slap you down. But Dave Gahan was there at that show, and right outside of the heart as we were running in, he had all access. He'd go wherever he wanted,
gonna
right?
say,
But,
I hope he wasn't running in with you guys.
no, he could do whatever. But yeah, black leather jacket, right? I mean, he's just total rock star standing right there. Right? Yeah. So anyway, let's get back to
What
your
was
story
your-
about what
what
you were
was-
actually doing today.
What was your first U2 concert? I know we've talked about this before.
That was probably it. That was
Was it?
probably the first one. I didn't have the opportunity to go to earlier ones.
Oh,
I wasn't even a big fan before that. I mean, I started to become a fan in high school with Rattle and Hum and Joshua Tree, but not.
That
I
was
wasn't
my
like
first
putting out
concert.
money to go to concerts. So.
We had, high school. Joshua Tree was the first concert in
That's
Tampa that I
incredible.
could get to go to. Which I
I've
was
been to
great.
many U2 shows, and all of
me
them
too.
just
Yeah, me too.
amazing, incredible. So
Never gonna. Honestly, I don't think there's. I mean, there are performances that beat the kind of the U2 kind of feel with some smaller concerts and stuff that I've gone to, but the one in Birmingham, Alabama, where they had the opening band. Why am I just blanked on them. I was going to say NWA, but it's not NWA with Flavor Flav. Why am I blanking on?
isn't that NWA?
No, that's not. No.
look out!
That's-
I'm like,
That's
what
no,
is it?
that's Ice Cube. Or
Public
Ice-
Enemy. Yeah,
Public
that's
Enemy.
it.
Thank you. Public
Yeah,
Enemy.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Blanking on that one. Anyway, and then they had a lynched Klansman, like lowered
Hanging from the
lowered
oh
from
my
the
gosh.
rafters in Birmingham, Alabama. It was
a little
amazing.
provocative.
It was,
I bet. They do
Uh,
something incredible every time, and
Yeah.
I would have loved to have seen them in the Sphere, but I couldn't afford an $800 ticket or whatever at their recent residency in Las Vegas.
the Sphere, yeah.
that would have been cool, but
Yeah.
not going to do that.
That's insanity.
Got bills to pay.
Exactly. Yes. All right. What are we talking about? Real stuff?
I want to know what you were doing this morning. Yeah, good stuff. Okay, so we're recording on the eve of Thanksgiving here, and
Yes.
and just to give a little context here,
No
you've
one
been
else
doing
is in the office except for me.
you see-
So I had
keeping the musical
Exactly.
theme going here.
So I had a lot of RFIs and stuff to answer, and some of them require some new PDFs to be made and attached. But whenever you send a PDF, you also have to send a CAD. You know, I mean, ultimately they'll get the updated models and all that other stuff, but they want a CAD of that particular
they?
sheet. They being the client.
The client. Okay.
Yes. And so you'll have a PDF of that sheet, and you'll have a exported CAD of that sheet.
Not every client, right? But this
Not
one.
every client, but this one. And that's
Yeah.
just kind of the requirement. That's what we signed on for, and that's what we're doing. And
Give it away, give it away, give it away now.
yeah. And my goodness, it for some reason, because I wasn't doing it like where I was like, batch exporting or anything like that. As I would like complete a sheet that I was then exporting to PDF, or I would also just go ahead and export it to CAD as well, just so I can call that sheet done, send it on out.
Done. Final version 5.84.
Well,
really
revision,
final.
whatever, because it's going not only to the client, but also the contractor. Oh. So it was taking like 20, 25, 30 minutes just for the CAD export. It was constantly locking up the no response. Revit, no response. You're like, come on.
Why are you doing CAD exports at all? Aren't you also just giving them the model at that point?
We aren't giving them the model right now. And look,
talk about the insanity.
There's so much insanity. Yes. Are we giving them the model? Yes. Do they honestly really need a CAD? Not really.
No.
But
right.
And if they really needed the CAD, they could export it.
What would they do with the CAD that they can't do with the PDF?
One only knows. It's just I'm not the one that knows.
You're saying it
It is.
So you're saying it does go to the contractor. So potentially
It does.
they're using it for some basis of shops or something.
I would assume that yes. And then specifically, this one is actually the drawings that I was working on right now. They were specifically going because they're verifying our plot regulations. So our plot boundaries and all of that other stuff. There's these things called deviations where we are encroaching in on or something else is encroaching in on our plot boundaries, or we're encroaching in on something else. And though it's been approved, the encroachment, they want to have those CAD drawings so that they can update the plot regulation sheets.
Hmm.
And so that's really what I was specifically doing. And it's monotonous. It's busy work. It's kind of if you have the model, you have the plot regulations, you have all of the things that you're asking for, and there's really no need for any of the other things. And in fact, actually, they do these comprehensive Navisworks models that have all of the different assets that are plugging into this overall development. And so each of them are already in there with their plot regulation and everything else. They call it plot regulations and I just call it plot boundaries, but same thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so all of these things are already there. They already exist in the Revit model. And you can't, you can put CAD in Navis, but it's useless in comparison to pulling in your NWCs and all that other stuff, your Navisworks files.
So while this is happening, this 20 plus minute export per sheet, you're saying basically, right?
Yeah.
What else can you do during that time? Like, does it completely take Revit down so that it's only doing
so
that?
I can't do anything in Revit. So I'm done. Like,
what version of Revit are you in?
This particular model is in 2022.
And you don't upgrade those for what reason?
Well, actually, for the longest time, we just upgraded it. And for the longest time,
it was 2022?
To 2022. We were, yeah. So for the longest time, we were in 2020 up until about 2 months ago.
That's right. I remember you saying you had like 4 different versions of Revit on your machine.
Yes.
2020 to 2024.
I have 2020 through 2024 and probably will be getting 2025 in the not too distant future.
One of the features of 2025.
Yes.
Is this batch PDF export in the background, which means that you can continue to work in Revit, but that's just PDFs. I'm assuming that doesn't count for DWGs.
But you can still do batch exporting of DWGs and hopefully they would be doing the same thing because it's essentially using sort of the same batch file kind of thing to do that. But
I don't think you should give that credit unless it's actually
true.
I'm guessing
true. You're right. I don't know because I don't have it on there. I haven't test driven it. In fact, to be quite honest with you, because I don't even have any projects right now that are in 2024. I've only opened 2024 just to open it and say it's
Just
there.
curious
but I
why
haven't
you guys
used it.
keep stuff in those versions. Is it because your consultants only have those versions? The owner only has that version? The
Our client,
contractor? Like,
the
what's
only
the deal?
the only reason why we kept it in 2020 for so long was because our client. And then when they upgraded to they only upgraded to 2022. So if I brought it would be far more efficient for me to be able to use these models, and they're behemoth models. They would be far more efficient to use in the more current versions. But
Maybe.
I can't upgrade them to anything further than what the client has.
Let's take a short break from the conversation to tell you about today's sponsor. Not long ago, we started hearing about a company helping firm owners build effective remote teams. When we looked into it, we found World Teams, a company that specializes in helping smaller architectural practices set up skilled and reliable remote teams. What struck us most was how they're addressing a critical challenge for small architecture firms: the need to scale teams up or down as workloads change. It's a great way to handle busier periods without the overhead of permanent hires, keeping labor costs manageable. World Teams is designed with this flexibility in mind. They're a lean, high-impact company that connects architecture firms with talented remote professionals, saving the hassle of endless resumes and interviews. Plus, they operate within your time zone and prioritize near-native English speakers, ensuring clear and effective communication with your team members. Their flexible contracts allow firms to adjust team sizes as project demands change. You'll be connected directly with these skilled professionals, building trust and collaboration while reducing operating costs without sacrificing quality, a win for any practice looking to expand intelligently. If you want to hear more about World Teams and how they can help your firm grow, visit worldteams.com/hire-top-talent. That's worldteams.com/hire-top-talent, or you can click the link that we've provided in the show notes. So once again, follow the link in the show notes or go to worldteams.com/hire-top-talent. Thank you to World Teams for helping make this episode possible. And now, back to the conversation. So why do you think it takes so long to export these sheets? Is it because the model is so big? Is it because you
Probably.
have a ton of
Yes.
errors in the model? Like how clean is this
No,
model?
surprisingly enough, these models now are pretty. We're talking. I would say that if there's any errors in it, we're not talking anything more than like 20. But you're also talking
A few
about
hundred.
no, surprisingly enough,
Few
we're
thousand.
no, like few as in like maybe 20.
Yeah,
Surprisingly
that's
enough, I mean we've worked because one of the
tirelessly
no
to keep these. Yeah, because one
no,
of your
one of the-
contract items.
one of the contract items is to give them a clash-free model. Because I mean that's
Well, does that mean error-free? I mean, a clash isn't actually even going to be an error sometimes.
yes. I mean, I may be using them interchangeably, but they.
And I mean warnings. Like in Revit lingo, it's actually warnings.
Oh yeah,
right?
we
It's like
we clean
that
out,
everybody ignores.
Yes, we clean out tons and tons and tons and tons of warnings, tons
because you have to.
because
you
we
wouldn't
have
if
to.
You didn't have. So the reason I ask why it takes so long is a lot of times the number of warnings
It is a
directly
behemoth
contributes
it is
to
a,
things like this.
Yeah, it is a behemoth model. It is massive.
Can you give a size? Can you give a megabyte or a gigabyte size? Can you look it up?
Give me a second here.
I mean, and then you kind of think about this from an initial strategy point of view, right? And so, yeah, this is like super nerdy, but this is Revit stuff. And I think one of the things that people don't really think about is how much time architects spend. Like this takes me back to the days of Photoshop's preparing to save dialog box, right? Which was back in the early versions of Photoshop, because machines were so RAM limited, like you would be doing filters and operations to your Photoshop file, and then you would hit, file save, and this dialog box would pop up where it would actually convert everything that was like it was using in the RAM disk into RAM, and it would say preparing to save, and you would watch this progress bar slowly march across the screen before it was even going to literally do the command you asked it to do, which was save the file, right?
True.
And so nowadays with this file syncing to central, but also exporting these kinds of things, they take an inordinate amount of time, a lot of it which you can't actually automate but a lot of it that you can, and I assume you guys aren't because you're doing it manually, like
Right.
to do it overnight or something, but because you're kind of working in real time, saving these sheets out one sheet at a time and saying, okay, done, check, next.
Right.
Maybe you can't automate it overnight or whatever, but it seems like, man, like these are the kinds of things nobody thinks about when they're like, oh, I'm going to be an architect, which means you're going to literally sit at your computer pushing buttons in this
Yes.
monotonous
Click.
way to save and export files that take 20 plus minutes per sheet to get out. And it's like, is this really what you're getting paid for? Man.
So I'm trying to find one of the architectural models because
It doesn't even want to tell you how big they are.
It's probably like, you'll be embarrassed. But
And it's in the cloud, I assume.
it's in BIM 360. And so, but I just saw one model, and the one model was 2.2 gigs.
So if you go back in time, if you were going to do it again, and I know this is like a huge project,
Yes.
would you change the way you set up your models?
Yes. Yes.
The way that they link to each other and all
Yes.
that stuff. Can you talk a little bit about like the way you did it versus what you would do differently?
So the way that we did it, the way that we should have done it is we have 8 buildings and it should have been 8 different models, because then it would have been a little less cumbersome. And then the people who were assigned to them could basically assign to them, and then just essentially have one model. So let's paint a picture. It's 8 buildings. There are multiple levels of basements below. The multiple levels of basements below, it's all interconnected. So it's a network of mechanical rooms, storage rooms, other program
it's an underground
spaces.
city as much as an above ground city.
But it's
campus.
But each building is interconnected at the basement level.
Below ground. Okay.
And so it made sense because of structure, how the structure was based off of the basement plans, to basically segment it into what we considered North Campus and South Campus. North Campus had 3 buildings and South Campus had 5 buildings, with a small, like some connector hallways that we would basically kind of like cut down the middle, and that would make them. So that was kind of the mistake is.
So you have 2 files?
So we have 2 files. Yeah. So we have
models.
We
Okay,
have
so north and
two
south.
models for architecture. And then
Okay,
of course,
so a north and a south, 3 buildings and 5 buildings. And
Yes.
are all these buildings have the same like finished floor datum running across them?
no,
Of course not.
because let's just say the north basement level is at a different elevation, basement 1 level. So we call it B1. So B1, there are 3 different finish elevations for B1. There's
For 3 different buildings.
no.
Okay.
So in our north, dude, this is where the insanity comes into play. So of the 3 buildings in our north campus, 2 of those buildings straddle between 1 B1 level change.
Okay.
And then the half of those 2 buildings, and then the other building, which is our theater and everything else, those are all share the same finished floor. So it's literally 2 different floors, 2 different levels that make up that. And so that was in its own right a big pain in the butt to kind of get all of that coordinated. And then everything else basically hits. There is no single datum of what that first floor, ground floor, finished floor is either. And
So you have all these different levels you have in the active model for like when you're drawing a wall, which level to attach it to.
Yes.
Or anything in Revit,
Yes.
because it's all associative to levels and grids, right?
Yes.
And so you have how many levels like if you did the pull down list of like what level to attach a wall to, how many levels would there be?
Well, we have 8 buildings, so
But in one file you don't have all 8 buildings, levels, and grids,
okay,
right? You
so
have three
we
and
have
5.
let's just say in our north campus for ground floor we have 3 ground floors, but those 3 ground floors also don't consider the courtyards and things like that. So let me paint an even bigger picture.
So your site is
because
in that model too? Your site?
the site is referenced into the, or is attached into that. So
So that's a separate model.
it is a separate model.
Is it a model or
To a
CAD?
point, it's a model. It had to be a model to a point. And the
assumed so.
reason why is because our site straddles two different things: over site finishes and stuff over occupied space below and unoccupied space below. So there's like,
and why is that important?
Because it's like, how does like this, let's just say we've got a plaza, and half of that plaza is over occupied space and half of that plaza is over grade. That the portion over grade, it's relatively simple, right? You're just kind of creating the layers of your finished paving and all of that other stuff for all of that. As it gets in over structure, over occupied space, if you're planting in that same area in the landscape model, now it becomes a little bit more complex because that structure doesn't live in the landscape model. It actually lives in the architecture model or the structural model. And if you have, like, say, tree wells, those tree wells live in the structural model. And so, like, all of this stuff has to interweave between all of the different levels. And here's where you start to see where busts of, like, did structural set their structural slab at the right elevation, so that when you put all of the, because now, if you think of it, there's a portion of your landscape that is actually, let's just call it a green roof, right? It is a roof assembly, even though it's, when you're standing out there, you would never
Even
know.
though it's at grade, yeah.
Well, so there's, even if it's at grade, it's a roof assembly to a point, and then it becomes basically, then it's just pavers on
site work.
Site work. And so you have all of those. And so each of those, because the site is sort of a warped plane, because it's not flat, there is almost a 3-meter change in both. It just punched my microphone here.
That was an incredible sound.
Getting excited. But so let's picture it as just a regular piece of paper. So I'm going to hold up my
visual. We're getting a visual here,
right,
people.
So hold up piece of paper. So it's like on the longitudinal side,
like east to west,
east-west side, it drops 3 meters. But diagonally, it also drops 3 meters. But when you're placing all of those buildings all the way around it, each of those buildings, when they hit the ground floor or the ground plane, they're all sitting at different elevations as they hit. So
this is why I cannot believe you guys decided to put multiple buildings in one file.
Well,
I cannot believe it, because dealing with Revit's levels and grids
now
is
you know
pain
what
in the ass.
Yes.
If it's more than one building, it is absolutely. I mean, and just for the people coming onto the project midway or having to deal with that all the time, like, oh my God, talk about the matrix, right? Just like the stuff all dropping down the screen, and you gotta like somehow take this in and figure it out.
So,
it's a nightmare.
So the thing is that would it have been better to do, say, 10 models where you essentially had your South Campus model was just your basement levels, and then you plugged in your 5 models on top of that. Here's where we were starting to get pushback. And so this is where we start talking about, like, collaboration with your engineers and everything else. This structural, they didn't want to do anything more than 2 models, because their whole basement level and all of the structure that's coming off of it, it was all coming in so like all of the buildings essentially create one building. So if you looked at the North Campus and the South Campus, in the structure's mind, that was just 2 buildings.
Yeah, I get that. Right. I wonder though if they would still feel the same way today as they did back then when they gave.
Yeah, we were talking about that, and we were trying to talk about, like, what we'd do differently, what we would do better, and And
We all do this at some point when
and-
it's just like you're pulling your hair out with 20-minute exports of CAD files.
Exactly. And BIM is definitely one of those things. Now, like, so truth be told, the model that I'm doing these CAD exports out of is the biggest model of all of the models. And it has everything turned on. Everything turned on. Our interiors models, there is...
Do you mean models or do you mean work sets? Like there's actually an interiors model?
There's
like
an interiors
into
model.
This?
Yes.
So that's a separate model? Okay.
Yes. And mechanical and plumbing and IT and
All your
security
consultants.
and everything else. So
yeah.
Everything. So if I wanted security cameras to show up, I'm going to be turning on the security model. If I wanted fire protection to show up, I'd be turning on plumbing and fire protection, and so on and so forth. I mean, those are pretty similar to like most every other project, but the sheer size of them makes like...
They're set up the same way that you're set up, right?
Yes.
Where it's like a north and a south?
Yes.
Because they're not building that stuff.
Yes.
What I'm saying is
They're
like
building
they're
off
all
of us.
dictated based on how you decided to accomplish this in the first place.
Yes. Well, I will say that at least between the structure, mechanical, and architecture had this conversation early on. What should we do? What is the best way? And I think I may have been swayed a little too much by our structures, saying, I don't want to build a bunch of different models because everything's kind of interlinked together. I'd much prefer to do two. And so
I get that.
Okay.
I just don't know that. I just would wonder if it's still the same, sentiment or not, because like there really seriously needs to be lessons learned here after this to say, how will we do this next time? And like that rarely it happens, but not enough. And you have to do it with that same group of initial stakeholders to say, hey guys, like, okay, let's there's no pointing fingers here. Like this is seriously for the next time. It's not anything about
no.
And how would, knowing what we know now, how would we do it differently?
I'll say this. Did it make sense at the time? Yes. Because of just...
Well, you didn't know what you didn't know.
Exactly.
You didn't know how complex these files were going to get,
like,
how big they were going to get.
The sheer volume of detail on all of these models, which is part of our contractual requirement, going back to that, made these things become
is there
bigger.
Is there an LOD assigned to this?
350, which is so typical is 300. And even with that, so technically it's 300, but they've been demanding it to be more. And so with that,
it's getting a squeeze, man.
Yes.
Oh my God.
So with that, they're getting like 350 level documents out of the 300 level contractual.
Exactly. Yes. Let's just say it plainly.
Yes.
Oh my.
Yes.
And literally paying for it. Like you are literally paying for that with these exports.
Did you say pay or painting?
Pain. You're literally painting for this. The idea of the true cost of these decisions is not something that should be overlooked after the fact.
And honestly,
it's so easy to say yes up front. It is so easy to say yes, and it is so hard to go back and say, you know what, like that was stupid. We should never do that again, and we should stand our ground.
So I was talking to some students about models and stuff because they're building all of their stuff and Rhino and Revit and all of this other stuff. They're like doing kind of these hybrid workflows and things like that. And I was just like, as you start to work through them, you need to like learn how to integrate all of those workflows together so that you're not basically doing any board work, right? And they're like, and so I started to explain to them like what this particular model is. And I'm not joking with you when I say that like our South Campus model with the 5 buildings in it typically takes about 50 minutes to load.
50
to load. And that's just
open.
Just open
for the day.
And people are like, so what do you do for that 50 minutes? Like, don't close the model.
Email. Yeah. You do other stuff, right?
Do other stuff,
it's not like you can't do anything else.
But I mean, if you're
let's say if
your day is geared, your 8 hours of your day is geared towards doing 8 hours of production work. Syncing typically takes like 17 to 20 minutes
each time.
which of course you always get this, Evan, can you sync? Cormac, can you sync? Kind of like
Do you
internal
have
chats
anything
and stuff.
quantifying these numbers in the background so that you can actually put a real metric to them when you're all said and done?
I wish.
Beats, people. You got to get BIM beats.
BIM
Tell
beats.
John you got to get BIM beats. Holy
Yeah, I'm
crap.
gonna
You
have
need to know what this stuff is actually costing your firm.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally 100% agree with you, BIM. So I'm going to write this down.
Talk to Conrad over at BIM Beats. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like you can literally measure all kinds of things, and people are typically scared of these kinds of things because they're gonna, there's Big Brother, and they're gonna know what you're doing, but it's like this is serious business stuff. This is
the amount of
business
time
owns the software, they own the computers, you're their employee, this is their project, they have to deliver it, it's their reputation on the line, they need to know what it's actually taking.
The amount of
in
time, exactly. The amount of time that it takes for me to, well, let's just say that the amount of time it has taken for the entire team to wait on the model, to repair the model, to recover the model. Because yes, there has been
that hasn't happened.
Multiple recoveries of this model. Yeah. Who successfully sunk last?
Problem with big models, right? Is they're so complicated, right. It's easy to break them.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. And then of course, when you do eventually upgrade that model and things start to dehost and all of these other things, and you just basically have stuff that goes all haywire. Thankfully, this one didn't really, we didn't have as many problems as we thought. We originally, we ran a few tests. We created some duplicate models and ran a test, and we were getting thousands upon thousands of errors and things like that. And so thankfully we somehow got around it. I don't know how somebody else much smarter than me was working in the background to do all of that and make sure that it didn't implode on us. But
what's your billable rate?
Mine?
Yeah. Bill you out at?
I think it's like
150.
It's might be a little bit lower than that, but roughly around there.
Okay, so I mean, just the time it takes that you can literally just sit there. Let's just say.
Well, let's just say that
insignificant.
Well, let's just say that.
How old is the computer that you have?
I think because how old is the one that you got?
It's like a year. Mine's a year.
Year, and I think I had mine probably about 6 months longer than you got yours. So,
but let's just say it's not the top of the line, right?
No. For some reason, they kitted this one out, and actually, it's pretty good.
Like, yeah, I'm just thinking. This
is a guy who runs like 3 different Revit builds
at the same time. It's not incapable. My point is, when you're doing work like this, a faster computer makes a measurable difference.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Peanuts compared to your billable rate.
So
and that's where a lot of people don't want to upgrade hardware, even though it could seriously do like a 20% increase in productivity, and it doesn't even compare to how much they're wasting on your billable rate with this kind of stuff. And yet there's so much pushback for doing that.
100% preaching to the choir, because you and I know, because like we've gotten together and with some of our friends that you used to work with who used to make fun of me when they would see my computer and compare to theirs. It's just like their build made more sense for the work that we do versus this. Like, I was like, oh, look at my old timey machine here. Let me crank it up.
That's right. When we were at the AI Club.
Exactly.
It reminds me though of like, okay, so there's different paradigms here. You could be completely working in the cloud, and like a data center could be doing this stuff. Right. And that significantly cuts down on the amount of time, because data centers have the most capable hardware in them, right? They can spin it up in a moment's notice. When you're bound to your desktop machine to do a lot of these things, like you literally should be getting a new machine every 6 to 12 months, because that makes a difference in this. That is, again, like it just doesn't make sense not to do it. Right. It increases your productivity in such meaningful ways. And for you to have a machine that's over a year old, it doesn't make any sense. Like what if it cut down 5 or 10 minutes off of each one of those exports? Let's just say, and like how much does that add up over the life of a project?
But listen,
it's a crazy number.
Listen, I'm gonna see if I can do it. I would have to replace my stickers on my computer. Yes, I did.
Oh, so it's you. It's you who doesn't want the
Oh,
new
no,
machine.
no. It is definitely.
No, I
it is
really love
definitely
my stickers.
It is definitely not me. I can go out and buy new stickers. Trust me.
I love my stickers.
I love my stickers. No,
There's just there are answers to these. A lot of times people don't want to know what those are because it takes work, it takes effort to implement these things. At the same time, like
I'm literally
it's crazy
the
that you're profitable on projects like these. If you are, I mean, assuming you are, it's crazy because of how much literal time is wasted.
But So
process.
let's just say that I opened up the model, right? So if I wasn't doing something else, which I was while it was opening, that's an hour, right? And then I'm synchronizing. Let's say I synchronize 4 times a day, just 4 times a day.
Oh, you only save 4 times a day.
Let's just say if I only did 4 times a day, and it's 15 minutes per sync, that's another hour gone. And if I'm exporting CAD like I'm doing right now, and I'm just doing 4, literally right now, I am only doing 4 files, and it took me around 40 minutes for 2 of those files. And we started recording when one of them was still going. And so
Revit in the background.
I'm running
You're
Revit.
jeopardizing. Jeopardizing this recording right now.
I totally agree with you that I'm jeopardizing because I couldn't force quit it or anything else. I needed it to.
Computer is fully locked.
Yes.
Cannot do anything. I can start a recording up.
Right. Exactly. So it was running in the background. And
How great would it be if the recording just stopped right now and that's the end of the episode right there.
You have reached your limit.
Yeah.
But okay, so if somebody is only working production on that day, don't have tons of emails and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're not at the level at which they need to be doing other things.
So then if you think about their productivity for the day, if just what I have been experiencing today, they've at least lost 2 hours of just waiting on Revit, waiting on the model.
Yep.
So now they're down to 6 hours. You do that on a daily basis, and you're just that. Yeah, just that. So now you're down 10 hours per week,
but they're still billing the project at that full amount.
Well, what else do you do? Where else would you?
I mean, it is project time. It
exactly.
Literally is.
You're just waiting on your project to actually wake up so that you can work on it.
But the bottleneck is your software, your hardware. Yeah.
Right.
Your workflow.
And so now somebody who's billable at 40 hours a week is really technically only working 30 hours a week because they're waiting on their machine and the software, hardware to
their
do
billable
it
rate, and there's your new machine
rate
cost right there. That's just totally.
And that's just 1 week. 1 week.
Yeah, no, it's probably not even a week, and it's
these conversations
it's
all the time
justifiable, and yet it will never happen, right? Yeah. And I'm not saying it's not complicated. Like somebody has to manage that process, but it's not.
You would almost
incredibly
say,
challenging either.
Hey, I think we're going to have a project team of 5 people on this project throughout the life of it, and we're going to have this project. Say it's going to be in the design phase, the documentation phase. Let's just be optimistic and say it's going to be 1 year. Okay. Bill in new machines for that. Because if you get the most optimized machine that can make them run a heck of a lot more efficient, then you've just by investing in new equipment for that project, you're going to be making that project more productive.
What you actually need to do is you need to run virtual machines here, and you could have any crappy computer at home, and the virtual machine is set up while you're working. Like it's literally ready. The next time you boot, you will be on a newer, faster setup. And it is totally transparent to the user. And firms working on projects like this that aren't looking into or actually implementing, not just looking into these technologies, That's crazy making to me, because you need to be able to have that, not only like speed, but redundancy. Like you can't afford downtime on projects like these. You just can't at all.
Totally agree with you. And this one particularly was because of just the demands that we had on it. I mean, it was now for everything. And
so let me just really explain what a virtualized machine is. It's literally you're just logging in and using a computer that sits somewhere else. It could be in a data center. It could be under a desk in your office because your internet bandwidth is fast enough. Like Revit does not need super high performance. Like the ability to look into that machine doesn't have to be 60 frames a second. That would be fantastic if it was. But that computer can be in a tower. It could be in a rack in a server room. It could be any kind of configuration that actually makes sense hardware wise. But it's definitely bigger and badder than the little laptop that you've got on your desk here with a couple of monitors. But all that is literally a station to look into a bigger, badder machine. And that bigger, badder machine can be spooled up or down. And I'm explaining this to the audience because it's important to understand that these technologies exist. Like that thing can grow or shrink depending on what you're doing. And like I said, like you could log in the next day and not notice any difference. All your stuff's in the same place. Your desktop background looks the same, everything. But that computer has been updated to a bigger, badder machine. And all you know is you have the best all the time. And that is totally possible today.
Did I not mention the stickers? I have stickers on my computer.
Then you get to actually keep your stickers, because it doesn't matter what machine you have.
Yeah, but does the virtual machine have stickers?
Dash cam under the desk to be able to look at your stickers. Is that what you
look? I mean, and it's funny is like, so I've got this screen kind of minimized and I'm looking at my desktop with all like the little icons and stuff on there. And I have Revit 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. That just, so that's how many.
And you're using them all the time.
Sadly,
and how much RAM do you have? You got like 64 gigs of RAM or 32 or what do you got?
Probably.
Machine? Probably.
Probably. Let me.
Like it's this is the backbone of our business, and I'm guessing that the skimpage is happening.
Yeah.
The people, our people are our differentiator.
Yeah.
That's what we keep telling
because they can work faster.
They could just work more, longer, click more faster. Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter how. I mean, there's times when, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but there's times when I'm working in Revit and I'll click and I can count. I've literally counted up to like 3 minutes until that it's activated, or
the thing that you clicked on.
The thing that I clicked on is ready for me to kind of like work with it. Here, it's like, again, you think about like how long just waiting on Revit has, and I think that's the show title there, waiting on Revit.
Yeah.
I think that just waiting on Revit is such a killer of productivity time.
But you also have to save these files. And this does go back to the original decisions that you guys made on how to set these models up. So it's on you.
I feel the blame.
Ouch. And like, let's just say it's like impossible to untangle that web now,
no,
right?
Yeah, there's no way.
Change that.
Yeah, there's no way for us to undo this one.
Could it be done? Sure. Nobody's willing to actually do it.
How much more time? And really, then that to untangle it, that's not billable. I mean, that's not billable to them. That's just on us. It's like, oh, if you want to make it better, okay, here, you do this. And they even asked us to do that, because now there's other conversations that we can have on why they asked us to do that, because of how unruly of a behemoth it actually is.
I believe it.
And the thing is that we're like, we've been working on this project for 2.5 years, and now you're asking us to do this, even though you were the ones who approved it.
It would never happen cleanly.
Yeah,
let's just say
never
that.
happen cleanly.
You would lose stuff. You would break stuff. Oh my goodness.
Exactly. And so they were just like, no, there's no way that we can do this.
Oh, at least you guys said no to something.
Why you want to make me cry?
Yeah.
Let's end this episode with a bunch of sobbing from Cormac.
No, really.
Yeah, no, really.